Stay Ready is the mentality birthed through the trials and triumphs of life as an NFL long snapper. Join me in conversations with teammates, mentors, friends, and family who help me realize that stay ready is so much more. A deeply rooted principle of life in all things faith, family, and football.
Welcome to another episode of Stay Ready, the podcast. Today we have some special guests. It's a family affair. I got my wife, Bree, here, but we also have...
We have my brother, Bryce, and sister-in-law, Krystal.
Yeah, so welcome, guys. They just drove up from Evansville. They're flying out to Florida tomorrow, so happy belated Father's Day to you.
And happy early birthday.
Yeah, so, thanks for being here. And I know it's kind of a last-minute little scheduling to get you guys on here, but... Bree and I both thought that you guys have a really special and unique story that we wanted to share because I think it's pretty prevalent with a lot of couples and a lot of families, and we'll get into that more. But I'm going to toss off to Bree, maybe introduce them and get a little context on where they live, how they met.
Well, I'll let them share.
Okay.
Tell us where you guys live, how you guys met, because that's always a funny story.
So we're both from Evansville, Indiana. We live across the street from each other.
Neighbors of 11 years.
11 years neighbors. Hilarious.
Didn't talk to each other, different high schools. And
She literally lives across the street from us, and I don't know that any of us communicated to them.
Great neighbors. Great neighbors.
I know.
Yeah.
But in our passing, though, like, we would always pass, and it was that awkward, like, hey, aren't you my neighbor? Yeah. And then we just kept going.
Yeah.
A fun fact, Krystal is a twin. She's got an identical twin sister. So there are two of them. Back in high school, I was like, there's two of them, but I didn't know which one was which. Obviously now, years later, here we are. But the story of how we originally met and we kind of started to become, our friendship really took off. I was going out with a group of guys in Evansville to this bar called Little Cheers. Downtown.
Shout out, Little Cheers.
Shout out, Little Cheers.
It's not there anymore.
Oh, man.
Probably Thursday.
So I was there with some guys, and this was a time in my life where you're not really looking for anything. You're just kind of there with some friends and just having a good time, living it up. And then I ran into her. I remember this bar was crowded. Everybody was around the bar, and I saw her from across the way, and she kind of looked at me, and then here she comes walking up, and I'm thinking we're going to have this conversation. And then she said, hey, can you get me a drink? And I was like, yeah, I'll get it. And then I got her a drink, and she was gone.
What did she order?
It was a Bud Light. I think that's what it was. Like, that's at least what I got her.
Yeah.
And then it was just a couple days later, the power of Facebook. Now, this was a time before it blew up, but back in 2006, or no, it was 2007, something. And she reached out to me through Facebook, just kind of, a message just saying,
Little DM that said, hey, neighbor.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, I, kind of sorry for giving you the cold shoulder, but thanks for getting the drink. And then it's kind of how we hit it off from there.
Yeah.
We just kind of built this friendship, and then eventually it would turn into something more. So
I feel like our spark, we kind of started over a beer too.
Yeah, we just had mutual friends and we started hanging out.
But remember I came over to your house and I had a beer and we were watching the football game?
Yeah, watching the Notre Dame game,
Yeah.
and I knew how to entertain, and I knew you were a big Irish fan, so I had you over, and you're a beer girl, so just provided the adult beverages that evening and had a good time.
Okay, anyways.
Yeah.
So the funny story about the Notre Dame thing. So we're dating for 2 years by now, and I got engaged. I proposed at University of Notre Dame, at the Grotto.
Yeah.
That was kind of one of those places where, I think this was like my 12th year in a row. My brother and I always went. We always went with this group of friends. And I remember I asked her to go. It was Notre Dame versus Navy. Notre Dame luckily won. And
What year was that? I was at...
2000, it was 2011, yeah. Yeah, I think we talked about this
Dude,
before.
I think I was at that game.
Our whole family was there.
So
Isn't that crazy?
I had asked her mom a week before.
That's so...
Yeah, I asked her mom a week before, and I kind of had this plan in my mind, and the Grotto was kind of a special place for me because that was kind of a place where I would go to, and back when my mom had breast cancer, that was my place where I went. You had to light the candle, say the prayer,
Yeah.
and you went on your way. Every trip to Notre Dame, we always stopped at the Grotto.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cliche to propose there, looking back on it now, but at the moment, like after the game, we went. It was dark, it was lit up. it was perfect. I feel like no one was around, and got down on one knee, and I think I definitely took her by surprise. And
Yeah, I had no idea.
I guess you could say the rest was history. We got married in 2013, just celebrated our 9-year anniversary, June 9th.
Congratulations, yeah.
Yep, 9 years, and then we knew right out of the gate we wanted to start a family, and so in 2014 we had our first son, Owen, who will be turning 8 this July. So
Big O.
Big O,
Big
there,
O,
man.
Big O.
Big
Live, and we have our first time having a live audience, so a lot of pressure, a lot of pressure.
We got to keep him close.
Yeah.
So that's how we started, and from there, I know we're going to get into something a little bit more today, because after Owen, we kind of had a little bit more of a surprise. So
Yeah. So I mean, the reason Bree and I were talking about who could we have that we're pretty close to on the show, and we want to share testimony. We want to share really common things within families, but it's not really talked about a lot because it's either difficult or there's maybe, and you can share more from your perspective, but maybe a little bit of embarrassment and a little bit of shame. I don't know, like just all these different emotions, and people don't really want to talk about it because you just feel like maybe you're the only one that's going through this, and families struggle trying to get pregnant, and so maybe share a little bit about just kind of your pregnancy journey after Owen. Owen came and you mentioned a surprise, and maybe talk about that surprise and kind of just the kind of incredible tough challenge you had from there on.
Yeah, so we got pregnant, and it was a big surprise. We were not trying, obviously not preventing, but not trying. I remember I was at work when I found out. I cried, but was excited after that.
Yeah.
Went home, gave a little gift to Bryce to tell him, so excited. And it kind of just, you have that first pregnancy test, it's positive, and you get so excited of the future.
Yeah.
And then everything was smooth up until about week 17, and I started bleeding. Went to the emergency room, they couldn't find any issues. I did have to go see a high-risk physician after that. Didn't see anything on that either. Overall, she looked fine, looked normal.
Yeah.
Nothing that I can remember stood out. But I did, at the high-risk doctor, he did say the bleeding could eventually cause an early rupture of membranes, and then we would have to deliver.
Yeah.
So...
But like you weren't put on bed rest.
I was put on bed rest for just a couple of days.
Okay.
Since they didn't see anything at the high-risk doctor, he took me off since I had a sit-down position at work. And it was fine.
Yeah.
I was just bleeding up until about 22 weeks.
the checkups are always we always felt we left there with a positive, and when you're having that bleeding, you stay away from Google, but you always go on, you're thinking about the worst.
Yeah.
The worst is always in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
And maybe for us, we were always looking at the positive. We always kept thinking like, because we left the doctor's appointments always, heart looks great, everything looked great, that's all they kept telling us, everything looks great. So, you're thinking the worst going in, but we left there with a whole different perspective. We're going to get through this, we're going to get through this. And,
a lot of anxiety,
a lot
of emotion, a lot of Googling that I shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
Never do that.
And that's something that she struggles with too, is anxiety. But even when you're pregnant and then, having these things come up, it was just like, oof. But, just a lot of like, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this. So.
Yeah. So bleeding from about 17 weeks till about 22.
Yeah.
It was the middle of the night. I was up. I started having a larger amount of bleeding. And when I would go to the bathroom, I noticed I was leaking. So I sat there for a little bit, went back to the couch, and did it again.
Yeah.
So I called my mom because he was asleep. Owen was home. My mom came and got me. I told him I'm going in. Something's not right. I don't know what it is. Wasn't trying to get him upset when I, didn't need to yet.
Yeah.
So we get there. I told him I'm leaking. I think that, amniotic fluid is leaking. And they did a test and they checked it. I saw the nurse shake her head yes to the physician, and I think I went into shock a little bit after that.
Yeah.
So they had an ultrasonographer come over and check to see what was left, if there was any amniotic fluid left, and there was not. So he told me I would be there till I delivered. Didn't know when that would be. So they moved me to a different room. But Bryce, you weren't even here yet. I had to call him on the phone, just told him to get there because we didn't want him to worry while driving.
Yeah.
So we kind of knew what was going to happen, but we didn't tell him yet.
Yeah.
Called everyone else. I don't know when you came. Or your mom
I
came.
think I came the next morning. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't remember.
Like this, you know, we were just talking, you know, and we never shared this story before. We really was just without, besides our mom, my mom, your mom, and my dad. This story is so burned in my brain because I remember it vividly. That weekend, as she shared, we were celebrating my dad's birthday. Everybody was in Taft to be in town, and she kind of said, you know, I'm not feeling well. We're gonna leave. So that's when, you know, she started noticing something was wrong.
Yeah.
And I was back with Owen in bed, and you get that wake, and I kind of saw it on her face, like something's not right.
Yeah.
And she told me like, hey, I'm gonna go in and get it checked. I don't want you to worry. Don't stress. My mom's gonna meet me there. We'll be fine, you know. But as soon as she left, I remember as soon as the door left or the door closed, I called my dad right away. I was like, hey, do you think you can come in, check on Owen? Without hesitation, he was there. I got in my car. I don't even think I was out of the neighborhood. I got the phone call, but I can tell by her voice, like this isn't good.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember putting the car in park. I was telling her, her twin sister's coming in, and I went ran right past her, right up to the front desk, and it's Krystal Fonner, and I couldn't even get it out.
Yeah.
And they're like right down the hall, you know, and I got around the hall, I went to her side of the bed, and her words was like, it hit me like 1,000 pounds, and just like, she's like, I think I'm losing her tonight. That was what she said, and I was like, what? And she's like, we're having her tonight. And I feel like right after that, the doctor came in and she was trying to explain, you know, what was going on. But at the same time, I don't even know if she knew what was happening. It was kind of, you know, besides the delivery, her water broke, and we're having her tonight.
Yep.
And her mom was at the foot of the bed, and just, you know, at that moment, it's like your world just comes crashing down, and you're trying to process it, but at the same time, I was trying to be strong for her because she's about to go through something.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
You know, very difficult. So, you know, it's just a lot to process in that short amount of time.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
So then we got moved to a new room,
Yeah.
the delivery room.
and they gave you some medicine.
They gave me some medicine.
You didn't get a.
I was very medicated.
Yeah.
I didn't get an epidural, but the medication that they gave me, I don't remember a whole lot.
Yeah.
I do know they were feeling on my belly. I had some pain, so they were worried about infection and my safety at this point.
Yeah.
So we had to start the delivery.
Yeah, So I remember this vividly. I know the tech came in, and just remind you too, like 2 days or 3 days prior, we had the full body scan.
Yeah.
And the heartbeat, everything, and you've been through that with True.
Yeah.
And it's like it's the craziest thing in the world to see it. The 3D scan, you got the baby, and she's moving. The heartbeats, it's beautiful. Everything, you got nothing but positive.
Yeah.
And the tech came in, and she said, you know, she put the, I don't know, there was something on there to kind of hear the heartbeat.
Yeah.
And we're hearing Kinsley's heart through
Yeah.
the monitor. And I remember going back in there in the room, and the tech or the doctor did come in at one point, and she kind of laid it out to us. She was like, you know, we were talking about this, and it was like, I remember a percentage in my head. It was like, there's a 15% chance. And me, you know, it's like, yeah, we got it, 15%.
She was so small. Lungs aren't developed at that age.
We were like a week away from the full development of the lungs, but we felt
15% chance of her surviving.
this delivery. And that's all we needed to hang on. You know, we were ready for that. You know, it was just like, okay, we got it. There's a chance.
Can't give up that little bit of hope.
Right.
Because you were at 22 weeks, and I believe, isn't it pretty like common? They say if you can get to like 24 weeks, usually a baby is.
I think
obviously
so.
it's a higher percentage of
Right.
surviving. So you were like obviously so like
We were right there.
close.
We were so close.
Right there. And so you're sitting there, and you know, I'm by her side, and you're just hearing the heartbeat, and you're just like, this is you know, I can hear her. the whole time. And I think we end up having her at 8:30 at night. But the delivery was different. Like when she delivered Kinsley was still in the sack.
Yeah.
And I remember the doctor looked at the doctor and I both made eye contact, and it was kind of like a shock because she didn't expect it. No, I don't I mean, I knew of Owen because when I was there for Owen's birth, and I was like, that did not look like how Owen came out.
Yeah.
Obviously, and it was
Silent.
silent. The nurse even kind of gasped. The nurse standing on her side kind of gasped because she didn't expect it either. There was that eye look, and then she kind of got Kinsley out of the sack. She turned quickly around, and then that's when I felt like they knew. And the crazy thing is, again, they left that heartbeat on all the way up until the delivery.
Yeah.
And assuming that she didn't make it after that, obviously. And I remember they washed her up, and they gave her to Krystal, and I can't even put in words. I don't know. I can't even put in words.
You just
that
look
moment.
at her and you talk to her, and
I mean, she had, here's this baby. She had long legs, 10 fingers, 10 toes. She had my nose, we said. Just a honker of her nose.
Yeah.
But, you're holding her, and it's just again, just the processing that part, and looking at her and watching her go through that was, I tell you, it was a lot. I remember they came in and the nurse, she was checking on her because, again, they were worried about Krystal through this delivery. And I remember the doctor, she was like, we're going to get your wife through this. Yeah. And so they would come in and Kinsley stayed with us the whole time. They kept asking, do you want us to, we're like, no, just keep her in here. We want her.
we didn't even want to leave.
Family got to come in and see her and hold her. We thought that was appropriate.
And then Father came in and blessed.
He did. He came in and blessed her and had some few words for us. And I'll never forget. There was a moment in the room. I mean, we didn't sleep, but there was a moment where she was holding her. I felt it was really early in the next day, and I sat on the couch and I think I was kind of dozed off a little bit. And I woke up and I happened to look over, and she was singing to her, and it was. I tell you, I think I'm tough, but she's got me beat big time, going through that. And I just, it's a whole different thing, compared to what it was when we had Owen. And I knew we had a long road ahead of us. And at that time, my goal was to get her through this. I didn't want her to feel like this was on her, so it was looking at her go through that process. I mean, that was like, ton of bricks.
Yeah. So, man, that's a lot to unpack. And again, thank you so much for sharing that. So, Krystal, for you, like in that moment, we got your perspective and kind of what you experienced, watching Krystal go through what she was going through, seeing your baby girl there, holding her physically in your hands. I mean, for you, what was it like, as the mother, just the emotion that you felt?
Yeah, so I was in shock.
Yeah.
I don't know when that even went away.
Yeah.
Like I said, during the delivery, I was very medicated. They kept me that way. You just have a lot of sadness. You go through a lot. It's a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And we had to then decide what we were going to do with her, because she was after 20 weeks, so it was stillbirth, and it didn't even hit us until they said, what funeral home?
Wow.
Where's she going to be buried?
Yeah.
What do you guys want to do? What's her name? All of those things.
Yeah.
So I felt, sad and mad,
Yeah.
very angry. I didn't understand, and then you also have jealousy that comes in there of other babies that were around.
Yeah.
You just feel different. You feel like, I don't know.
Yeah.
We weren't
I think it's crazy. Like, you're already experiencing a parent's worst nightmare.
Right.
I mean, at any perspective, whether it's miscarriage or stillborn or even like losing a child later in life. And then, like you said, here you are having to now okay, like you only get like the next day, it's like, okay, so let's start planning funeral arrangements.
Yeah.
Like who, what? Like I remember even being there with you guys and like we had to go pick out the tombstone and all that. And then it's like, add your guys' name to it. Like you're what, you were in your late 20s, early 30s.
Right. Yeah.
Who, you don't, that's like stuff you
yeah.
don't even think about doing. And, you know, mentally it's just, I think we forget, like when you do hear people go through this stuff, it's like you don't think about the things that follow and the other things that have
So I feel like, we're in shock. And we have to go through all of this. We have to do the obituary. We have to pick out flowers. We have to figure out the funeral home. We have to figure out where she's going to be buried. Are we going to do a 3-person lot? Are we going to have her by herself? And
like, let alone you can probably barely get out of bed.
Right.
You know.
Right. So honestly, we didn't even want to leave the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously you can't take her with us. And you leave with a memory box. That's what they give you. You walk out with a box. And you don't go out the front of the hospital like everyone else. You know, they tell people to stay in their rooms, and we go out a different side. So you just feel lonely. You feel alone.
And what was the reason for that?
I don't know if it's for our benefit, so we don't see the babies that were delivered healthy and, you know, leaving. I don't know. Which you know, we're,
Like there was a moment where I had to go out and get the car, and again, like that she was saying, there was like a side door, so it was like they were gonna hide us out this side, so we didn't come in contact with new parents.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I walk out the door, like the nurses, there was like, I felt like someone was to my left, and the nurses were telling this couple to go back in, and I looked to my left, and there's a brand new couple holding their baby.
Yeah.
And you're trying to process that, and, you know, and like she said, you just, that feeling of just like, there was, you know, I know we're going to talk about it in a minute, but about grief, like, you know, like it hit me like a ton of bricks, because, you know, I internalized everything.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you just, and then the service, you know, we had just kind of a private service because we talked about, like, you know, this, you know, it was just the appropriate thing for us to have for her.
Yeah.
So we had it at the cemetery, just family and close friends that came out to the service. And I mean, it was, again, it was that 48 hours processing that, like, it, you know, obviously the support of our family got us through that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, you just become so numb that you don't even know.
We're just going through the motions.
Going through the motions,
Yeah.
100%, which would lead on to other things, as we will talk about here in a minute. But it was just like,
And at this point, so when you go home, like, did you guys have your nursery set up? Was like, what was that like going home? And
I remember, I think I told your mom or my mom or somebody, I said, I don't want to see anything. So I closed that door, get rid of everything. I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
Obviously, they kept the crib and the dresser, but everything else I didn't want to see. Any baby girl stuff,
Just got rid of it.
yeah. If it weren't for Owen, I don't know that I would have ever gotten out of bed if I didn't have to.
and how old was Owen at this point?
He wasn't even 2.
So he's not even old enough, you know, obviously, I don't think he even realized of Kinsley until like 4 or 5. You know, I mean, he would know because we go to the cemetery and we celebrate her birthday. She was going quite often.
Yeah.
But I don't think, you know, he fully grasps what happened, you know, and, you know, that there was another, he had another sister.
Yeah. So for you guys, you know, moving forward, obviously you go through the grieving process and you kind of go through just those transitions from just complete, you know, tragedy, a tragic event like that. How long did it probably take you guys to kind of almost feel like you were back in your normal skin again, where potentially you wanted to try again to get pregnant? How long did that take?
So I was in therapy for over a year.
Yeah.
We didn't try again for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
There's mentally, emotionally, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So, so therapy for a year, and then we did end up getting pregnant again in August of 2017. Went for my 8-week first ultrasound, and it was a miscarriage.
Yeah.
So then that was another hit to us.
Like a setback. Yeah, I was on the football field. She called me at the time because I knew she was going in for that appointment, or I knew that she had that checkup, you know, And, the guilt kicks in now that she had to do it over the phone. It's like, I should have been there with her on that. But that, I know for her, she talks about that. I mean, like 2 years, I think 2 years, it's just solid anger, I mean, and for me, because I internalized everything during this process. And I remember my goal when we left that hospital was I wanted her to get her right. I didn't want her to feel guilt in this. But when we talk about grieving, it was like we both, she was going through the therapy. I went through 2 sessions with her because she was begging me to go. I kept saying, I don't need to talk to anybody. I'm fine. I'm fine. I was lying. I was lying to myself. I needed more help than anything. And I'll never forget, I went to the one, and I was so cold to this poor therapist. She was sitting there, I felt like she was just reading from a script, and my head was down the whole time. I'm giving her one-word answers, and I never forget, I think at one point she just gave up, and she just kind of threw the papers down, and she's like, you got so much pain. And I looked up, and I was like, how do I get rid of that? And I'm waiting, and she's like, well, it's never going to go away. You just learn to live with it. And I feel like, maybe people have told me that in the past, but that was like the smack across my face. Like, all right, you need to stop feeling sorry for yourself, and you need to start finding a way to find that happiness in your life. I can remember, I knew I had an issue. My best friend, who was like a brother to me, would call me and say, hey, we're expecting. And your initial reaction, I was happy for him. But at the same time, I remember telling Krystal, man, I have so much anger. There's so much anger inside me when people would call and tell me, because I was at that stage of my life where we're all having their first. And that feeling, and you're just like...
I remember I had a friend who announced to, the rest of us girlfriends, within a few days, I would say, after we buried her, that she was pregnant. I remember, I didn't want to feel jealous, but you do. You don't want to feel mad, but you do. Not at them, just that we don't have that anymore. We don't have her anymore, and we just went through this. It's like our world stopped and no one else's did. And so it's like we were angry because, look at us, somebody, we were just reaching for anybody. I was reaching for anybody to not feel so alone. And you couldn't just reach for someone who hasn't been in that situation. It's like I was reaching out to moms that I knew who had a similar thing happen, and I just felt so lonely. Even we had so much support. I had him, I had Owen, we had family and friends, but it just
still felt lonely and alone.
Very lonely.
So the second miscarriage comes. Obviously, that's after stillborn process with Kinsley. Then you have a year later have a miscarriage. I mean, at this point, you feel defeated, right? Completely defeated.
Lots of anxiety. I remember, the therapist said it was catastrophic thinking. I would think that the worst was going to happen in every situation. I would be late to work because once I dropped Owen off at daycare, I would get to the hospital because that's where I was working at the time, and I'd get to the door and I'd have to walk back to the car to make sure I actually took him. And I would do that numerous times. And so it got to the point where I'd have to take pictures of the car seat, date and time stamped, so I could look at it later. So much.
And you didn't feel that much anxiety prior to any of this? It all just kind of crept on?
I mean, I had anxiety, but not as big as that.
I mean, that lasted for a year.
I mean, you would go through my photos, and it's just full of empty car seats.
And she would call, or when I was, in the summertime, being a school teacher, I would drive, and she would call me 2 or 3 times, within 2-3 minutes. And I was getting frustrated because I was like, Krystal, he's not here. I dropped him off. So that frustration, because we're both grieving differently. And at the same time, it was and that had a huge effect on our marriage too. Because I'm one of those.
Consuming me.
It was consuming her, and I'm one of those outside, out of mind. I didn't want to think about it anymore. I literally, when she said the nursery was closed off for 2 straight years, that room was closed off. Never went in. We lived in that house. It was a 3-bedroom home, our first home that we brought him home in, and literally that 3rd room was closed off for 2 years, solid. Never went in there until the day I had to pack, and we sold the house, and I don't think she ever went in there because all of her stuff, Kinsley's stuff, was in a box in the room. I mean, maybe we used it as storage, but it was closed off. And which, you know, looking back on it now, like, you know, it wasn't healthy. We knew that. Looking back on it now, like, we got hindsight, you know, we know that that's one of the things the therapist said was, you know, you had to go through something life-changing in order to get past over that hump.
Sure.
Again, you're never going to, this is never going to go away.
Yeah.
Now, that's always in the back of my mind. This is never going to go away. But, so, you know, I remember, like, in this 2018, it was before season started, so as being a football coach, she told me in August, we're out of here. In August, she told me that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, football season, hot, heavy. We make a late run. We're in playoffs. We go to state. I come home in November, and she tells me, I'm out of here at the start of the year. Like, we're out of here.
Yeah.
Okay? December hits. And the whole time, my parents are, you know, they're entertaining the idea of, like, just because at this time, we knew she was pregnant with Addie.
Yeah.
They're saying, come here, we'll sell your home, and then you can stay here with us, but you'll have that support, the extra support she needs, that I need it too, didn't look at it then.
Yeah.
And literally, she left. She packed her stuff. She left, and I packed that, and I packed the whole house and got her store, and then we sold the house. You know, it was just like she was serious. She was like, "I'm out of here," and that's what we need. Looking back on it now, is like we were constantly reminded. You know, it was like we couldn't get out of it.
Yeah.
And,
You just needed to close that chapter, right?
finish it. Yeah, and I think, you know, grief is so hard because you don't realize it when you're in it. Like, I remember, like, being so miserable.
Yeah.
Miserable in the years of 16, 17, and 18. Like, I remember one of the coaches is a friend of mine, is my age, and he just looked at me and was like, man, you're just, like, miserable.
Yeah.
And, like, these are the years we're making runs to stay.
Yeah, you
like,
guys are
our best
rolling,
years.
Yeah.
You're feeling it. You know, you got a great team. And
Some football talk.
yeah, well, you got to have, you know, stay ready.
Special teams coordinator, man, getting elevated. Yeah.
No, but like I appreciated him telling me like how it is. I needed people to lay it out to me because in my mind, like I was like hiding it.
Yeah.
I'm fine, because I kept telling people like I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah.
And he looked at me like, I never forget. Dead eye, he's just like, dude, you're miserable. Like you are miserable. You're so wound tight, and you need like, you know, it was almost like just go. You need to get some help.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, at that time, we weren't really active in our parish. You know, we weren't active in our faith. And it wasn't that we closed that door. It just...
Well, the resentment builds up, right?
Yeah.
And the wall builds up. And like you said, you guys are grieving in different ways and forms. And you kind of mentioned, you know, now at this point, right, late in the year, you are pregnant now with Addie, right? Was there ever a time where... First of all, there's a couple things. There was ever a time for you guys where you just was like, we're not trying again because of we don't want this to happen again. When you found out that you were pregnant, was there ever that doubt, that fear that crept immediately into your mind, like brace ourselves for something awful to happen?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know that we ever said we weren't going to try again.
Yeah.
I just think it took, you know, a very long time to get to that point.
Yeah.
And once we were pregnant, I mean, like I said, my anxiety was already after her.
Yeah.
And now pregnant with this anxiety, those physicians had to hate me because I worked there.
Yeah.
And so I was bothering them all the time.
Just constantly wanting to get checked on and
Is she fine?
Yeah.
Yes, all the time.
Yeah.
Like, you became friends with the techs. I think, like, the techs that were there, it's just so, hey, you know, can we get dollars? You know, just...
Yeah. She's in there probably using it on herself, man.
How can I do this?
Yeah.
No, I did, you know, to take some of it to my advantage with some of the ones that I knew.
Sure.
But they knew.
Yeah.
I also had to see a high-risk doctor because of the premature one.
Yeah.
So I did have more ultrasounds that way too. The only scare we had is my cervix was shortened. But they watched me closely, and it turned out to be fine. She was perfect.
Yeah.
I don't remember any issues with her in that pregnancy. I had to do progesterone injections after, I think it started like 16 weeks, weekly. That's to help after having a premature.
Yeah.
Yeah. Overall, it was a good, healthy pregnancy. It's just, I caused all that anxiety.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, like I said earlier, a roller coaster. And you feel guilty having a new one. You know, you feel guilty like you are replacing, but you're not.
Yeah.
And that's why I took the time too. You know, we tried after a year and a half. I didn't want to feel like I was replacing her. I wanted to give myself that time to mourn her and who she was. And, you know, because she was important. She was very big to us. So, yeah, gave it the time. And it was good.
You know, and to this day, you guys, like I said, every year on her birthday, right?
Yes.
You go celebrate. You
go release balloons.
Sing
happy birthday.
So you make, I mean, like you said, she is part of the family. She is, you know, your daughter.
Yeah.
She turned 6 or 7 this year.
6.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's awkward too, because it's, someone asks you, how many kids do you have? It's like, what do I say? Because you don't want to get into, oh, well, I have 3, but we lost one, and, you know, and then go into all that. Some people, it's very awkward. So you don't know what to do in some situations, or it's like we're in a silent club that we didn't want to be in.
Yeah.
Because it's not always talked about.
Yeah.
It's not rare.
Yeah.
It's just the moms and the dads, and it's just not something people talk about.
Sure.
But we want to. I mean, we want to make awareness for it, and for anybody that's going through it. We felt so alone. I'm sure everyone else did too, and nobody should feel that way going through that. So.
Well, I know Bree can relate a little bit because, you know, when her girlfriends all were getting pregnant, and maybe there's one friend that maybe it's taken them a lot longer to get pregnant, or they've experienced a miscarriage. It's like, it's hard to be cheering for that couple that had just been pregnant because, you know, like, you know, one of the friends is going through, or personally you're going through something, and it's hard to, so you obviously you touched on that earlier. I mean, what would you, as a couple now who's gone through it, you have some years now since those things have happened, and you want to be more vocal about, you know, the stillborn and the miscarriage and how common it is. I mean, what I know you guys went to therapy, but looking back, if you could go back and start that process of grieving, maybe more in a healthy way, quicker, what would you suggest to young couples who are going through this right now that don't know kind of where to seek help or who to lean on?
So the hospital, they even offered it. I didn't do it. They have people that you can reach out to. They give you phone numbers and all of that information. The most helpful for me, they also give you books. I didn't read the books. I flipped through, but nothing like that helped me.
Yeah.
Reaching out to moms that knew what I was going through, that was the biggest help for me. I think we should have talked more together. We just kind of did our own process, and that was hard on us as a couple. And still now, to this day, we still have a lot of problems. So reach out for help. I feel like to a mom or anybody that's been through it.
Yeah.
Get therapy. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
And stay busy. That's, you know, stay busy. I remember I started working out at Pure Barre once I went through this. And so having that group of women around me too was really helpful.
Yeah.
Took my mind off of it for a little while. So therapy, talk to other parents that have been through it. Reach out. Don't be alone. Get up and get moving.
Yeah.
Don't stay in bed, because it's
being in
such
solitude
a dark,
is never
dark hole that you can get into.
Yeah. And for the husband, for the guy, I mean, what do you suggest?
I think the biggest thing for me was being more accepting of her, you know, of the different styles of grieving, and you know, again, I was one of those, like, out of sight, out of mind. I'm not gonna think about this in 6 months, and I was so naive.
Yeah.
And you know, I've had loss in my life.
Yeah.
We lost loved ones, but nothing that I've never grieved anything compared to this. And I kept thinking I was gonna be okay. Like, I'm gonna get through this. I'm gonna do this on my own. And so that's where the disconnect was. So stay up in your communication. You know, looking back, we've always talked about it, like, you know, communicating, you know, because at that time, you know, the differences in grieving, she was at the cemetery like every day.
Yeah.
I would just
she,
take a blanket and lay there.
Yeah.
I didn't ever want to leave her.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go.
Yeah.
So, like, she would call me and be like, I'm at the cemetery today. You gonna come by? I can't. No, I don't want to do that, because I didn't want to be around. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to be around it. I wanted out of my mind.
Yeah.
because.
And I feel like that's what most men would probably.
Oh
do.
yeah, because you know you think, I don't know if this is that bravado or whatever, but like I always felt like I'm gonna get through this. You know, luckily, like I say that, you know, luckily I had the support around me. You know, we talk about, we had her, but like, you know, my friend, coaches, co-teachers who would come in and check on me and say, hey, you know, I can tell something's wrong with you today. You know, and I would start to open up. I mean, I've always been a closed door. But when this happened, you know, I realized myself, like, I need to open up a little bit more. I can't do this on my own. So reaching out and getting help. You know, again, I used to think, like, therapy was weakness. Like, I don't want to go to therapy. I don't need to talk to anybody. And how I treated it, I was so cold to her until she said that to me. You know, you just got to learn to live with this. And I'll always stay with me because that's one of those things where, as she mentioned, like, it's that pain's still there.
It, like, pops up. It's like you can just be driving down the road and hear something or see something and it just clicks and like you're crying out of nowhere. It's just.
Or you get that like flash, like again that scene in the hospital, that 48 hours, like you know, you lay in bed and you're thinking about it, and you're like, what triggered that, you know? And it's always going to be there, but at the same time, it's my responsibility, you know, as a husband, as a father, to, you know, continue to show that love and you know, get that out, you know, get that being miserable out, you know, and find that what makes you happy.
Now, do you find, you know, I know before, like, Krystal can spend every day and night at the cemetery laying right next to Kinsley, and you wanted to shut that off, not see it, not go there, not visit. I know you guys celebrate every single week. Was that first year going back for her birthday, was that really difficult for you to...
Awkward. I was so awkward. Even, I would say, first 3 years.
I think it's still awkward, I think, for people. Like, it's just family there.
She likes to stay and linger. And I'm like...
let's go.
Hey, let's go. I just, the awkwardness, I just uneasiness, you know, I'm just...
But as time goes on, do you feel like it's a little bit more like, hey, her birthday's this week. I can't wait to go see her. Or have you ever gone just by yourself?
I used to, because I used to think I'm going to get over this. So I used to stop by on Fridays. Actually, just, I don't know, in my head as a ritual, I was going to do it on my way to the home before I go to a game. I used to stop by. I never got out of the car. I just drive in, and I had to tell her from time to time, like, hey, I went by there, but I never got out of the car. I would always drive thinking I can get through this. I stopped since then. I haven't done that for a year or two. It was kind of like that with church, too. Like, I remember, like, even going to church, like, I would drive and, like, can't do it today. You know, just with my faith, I felt like, you know, like, you know, God's always been there for us. Like, that door is always open. It's just walking through there, you know, and He's always going to be there waiting for us. I always felt like He's there waiting on us. It's just a matter of us walking through. And I felt like we've gotten past that, too, obviously. You know, we've become more comfortable with our faith. And I think, you know, I would say maybe the right word is accepting of the situation. I mean, here it is. We talked about 6 years, you know. And you would think people probably look at you like, what 6 years? But, like, that, I'm telling you, that when that pain hits, it hits hard. And you need to find something to kind of get that out of you.
But we've gotten better with church, and I do feel like we have to lean on that, because if we don't lean on that.
We got a crier in the studio audience.
Come here.
You want to come here?
Come here. You want to come here?
Come here.
Come here.
Come here, Addie. Come here.
So now that we have the entire family up here, we have Owen and Addie up here joining us. Like I said, it's a family affair. I mean, we just want to, you know, Bree and I you guys came to our mind as far as like who we wanted to talk to about, you know, these real life, you know, serious, common life situations, right? And we just appreciate you guys opening up and being vulnerable in the moment and sharing your story and reliving in those times. And I know, again, for you have a different perspective. You have a different perspective, and I just appreciate you just sharing that. And obviously, you've been blessed with 2 beautiful children, and you know, I know somebody that's listening has gone through this or something very, very similar, or, you know, just you sharing your insight as the husband and just how you struggled with that is going to help encourage the guy to seek help and not, you know, just be closed off all the time, you know. So thank you guys. We love you. And
thanks for having us.
You got anything to say?
No, I just want to say thank you for, being open and honest and vulnerable, and something that can easily like tear a marriage apart, and you guys are fighting for every single day. And that just goes to show, like your guys' strength in this. And yeah, is there anything you would want to share as far as like?
Well, on a happy note, I know that, you've been talking about this podcast for years.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of you for being able to put this platform on and give us a platform. Coming in today, she was extremely nervous because we never shared this story before.
Yeah.
And if there's someone out there going through some sort of grief, it's not just the loss of a child, but any loss, hopefully we can touch someone or help someone through that process. But congratulations to you. I know this episode's I don't know what seven somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But it's
Family
awesome.
edition, yeah.
I'm so proud of you and so happy
man.
for you and what you're doing. And so thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Oh, you bet. Thank you so much for having me. Love you guys.
Love you.
And stay tuned for the next Stay Ready podcast. Thank you for tuning in to Stay Ready, the podcast. If you liked today's episode, please comment below, like, and subscribe to our channel. I appreciate you all. We'll see you next time, and stay ready.